Hello everyone, I'm Scott Freymuller. The show is The Knot. We appreciate you watching and supporting us. I'm here today with Carey Conley, who's an established author. She's involved with a company called ULA, which we talked about on a previous episode. Today we're going to talk about suicide. And it's a very sensitive subject for a lot of people. A lot of people don't understand why, how, what. My experience with it is just, I don't even know what to say, really. But we're going to talk about it today a little bit so people have a little bit of an understanding of the process and the process really of healing and the process afterwards. And Kerry has an amazing story, a very traumatic story that she's willing to share with us today. And it's really off the cuff and raw like all of our content is. So Kerry, thank you so much for coming on the show and taking the time. And it's really an honor to have you here, seriously.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah, you're very well established as a professional and as a woman. You're setting the example for sure. And you're a grandmother now. That's really cool. Of a 1.5-year-old boy.
Correct.
Yeah, and your daughter's doing amazing.
Yes.
You said she's 27. I think
she is 27.
That's so cool. So we had the episode on ULA. And really, we appreciate you sharing that and letting people know that there's avenues for help outside of, going to see a therapist or whatnot. But you've done a lot. You wrote a book about your experience with suicide. And honestly, I'm not sure how to broach that subject, but however you want to do it and tell your story, I'm just going to give you the floor and you do your thing.
Thank you. I've been a speaker unofficially and officially for over 25 years. My specialty is talking about the importance of having a clear vision for your life. Because when I was 27, my first mentor encouraged me to sit down and write out what I wanted my life to look like. Because I did not do the 9-to-5 gig very well.
Right.
So I did that. I took a day and I wrote out very clearly what I wanted to create my life to look like. And it worked for me. And I became an entrepreneur and started coaching a lot of people on the vision aspect, as well as many other things. And then officially 8 years ago, I decided to create some content around what I've been teaching around vision. So I wrote my first book, Vision is Victory. So it's a workbook that people can go through. And started speaking and started bringing people into coaching. And during that time, unfortunately, 7 years ago, we lost my husband to suicide. And then 3 years later, lost my 26-year-old son to suicide as well. So now what I know is that this whole vision piece of why I've been teaching it for so long was preparing me to talk about it now. Because one of the aspects of suicide is that people lose their vision completely. They don't see the other side and they completely lose hope. So they start drifting, and unfortunately, it's a downward spiral.
There's no rhyme or reason to that event.
None.
I had a lot of experience with it, and every experience I've had, which there was many, there's no signs or there's nothing you can do.
No.
And usually they're super happy before they do it because they know that there's an end to their pain. And I'm really sorry. I don't want to get too emotional about it.
Right.
But I know it's super difficult. I can't imagine. I don't know if anybody can imagine that.
Yeah.
But the process that you went through afterward is really, really where you taught and helped other people. And I think that's, I said earlier, we're all here. It seems like my life path was to do this.
Yep.
It actually was to do this, is to do this.
No
and your
accident.
life path is to do what you're doing. And we're doing similar things on a different platform. But collaboratively, I think we can make a huge impact. And that's really cool. So tell me more about the book.
So 2 years after my son passed, my daughter and I decided to write a book. So we co-authored a book called Keep Looking Up. And the purpose of us writing the book is not so much to tell the story. It's to help other people who are going through their own adversity of whatever that is. But most especially, and I told you this a minute ago, that so many people came to Laurel and I asking how they could help somebody else because they did not know what to do. And we're not just talking about suicide, it could be anything.
Help somebody else just with anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the biggest question they had is they said, we don't know how to help. We don't know what to do for you. We don't know what you need. We don't know what to say or not say. So we wrote 11 chapters on here's what we learned so that it would enlighten people a little bit about here's some things that we learned in the journey that helped us, and here's some things that maybe you could apply when you're trying to help somebody else. So I think the biggest feedback we've gotten from the people who have read the book so far is how they've used it as a tool to help other people.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
that's
it is
amazing.
cool.
I mean, everybody has trauma. We talked about that, and we say this all the time, that your brain doesn't know the difference between a broken leg or a traumatic event or whatever. But what advice? I mean, like, what's the most impactful message out of that book, do you think?
You know, everybody has their own path to healing. And I think that's the hardest part for people on the outside looking in to understand, because typically what you want to do to help somebody else, Scott, is what you would want for yourself.
And that's always the right thing, huh?
Yeah. So, you know, so many people, for example, the minute they found out about both my husband and my son, wanted to rush to us, you know, just wanted to be there to, you know, hug us and cry with us and the whole thing. And quite frankly, what we did, I've joked about this many times, especially with my husband, because we knew a lot of people. I built a moat around the house, quote unquote. I literally just let certain people in and let everybody else just kind of wait it out, because we just didn't know, we were just in shock, right? So we
Like,
couldn't
it's
have all
unbelievable.
these people coming at you. And it's hard for people to understand that, because they feel like they should be there to help you. And they don't understand that by not being there and doing the things that you really need is more, it's more helpful. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I think that's the biggest message my daughter and I send in the book, is that you need to heal the way that you need to heal, and you need to give yourself and other people a whole lot of grace in the process.
What question do you think it is? Like, you want to help people, right? We're all, I mean, you're empathetic, I'm empathetic. There's lots of people that want to help. What question would you ask? Not necessarily in your situation, but what do you say? Do you say, is there anything I can do for you today? Like, what do you say?
You know, it's a great question, and it is what exactly do you need? You know, so many people want to bring you food. They want to do all these things. And I beg
'cause it's
people,
horrible.
please don't bring me food, because what happens then is you
You're
get all
not
this
hungry.
food
Yeah.
that you now are responsible for. I'll tell you the best thing. So my son worked for Channel 12 here in Arizona. And so the entire anchor team and they all came to the house.
sure they banded
and
together.
they brought us $500 in food. What's the word I'm looking for?
like gift certificate
Yes,
things?
thank
Like,
you. So helpful. Because I had a house full of people that were staying with me. And so instead of us having to worry about the food that was there or making food, we would just order from one of the restaurants. And
Yeah.
it's just stuff like that. And it's just being aware that sometimes you think that's not really helpful. It was huge for us.
So really asking that question.
Yeah.
Like, what exactly do
And
you need?
respect the answer. If they say to you, I don't need you to come and sit and cry with me, be okay with that. And don't take it personally and think, oh, they just don't really want me there. That's not true at all. It's just we just had to like figure some stuff out.
Sometimes when that happens, some of your own stuff unravels. You
Yeah.
know, there's some situations in my life where, you know, there's like a death. You know, a person in my life, there's a death in their family or whatever, and I just like wanted to be there for them. And
Yeah.
they're like, "No, I don't want you around." And I'm like, "Well, why would you want me around? Like, I love you." You know what I mean? It's
hard.
It's so hard to gather that. You know, when is there a time? Because I know you've done a lot of research on this and you wrote a book and you've really been engaged in that. So in your opinion, when is there a time like when you would push through that barrier? Is there ever a time?
What do you mean?
When somebody's going through a grieving process and they're like, no, I'm fine,
Right.
and they sort of start getting into that depression phase where they alienate themselves from the world and their friends. And do you think there's an indicator or anything where you might push through just to check on them and make sure they're not in a really bad place?
I think that is a very good thing to do. And I think it can be done where it's not you getting in their face all the time about it. You know, I still get texts from people randomly every once in a while going, hey, just checking in on you. Want to see how you're doing.
Is there anything you need?
Yeah. Or I get people who send me resources for things, just randomly, on grief, on organizations that they think I should be a part of or I should know about. And I appreciate the information, because people come to my daughter and I and say, hey, where can I send somebody who's dealing with whatever it is? So yeah, I think it is important.
Is it any contact? Is it like was a phone call better, a text better? And I'm just asking
Yeah.
your experience. Because, you know, sometimes it seems like when you're really bummed out, you don't want to be on the phone, right? Because you'll cry.
Yeah.
But if you can text, you can
Texting's great.
Texting's great, yeah, right? When you're going through that. And I'm laughing. I'm not laughing at the situation. I'm just like,
Yeah, no,
because
I
it's
understand.
so gnarly.
Yeah.
And so impactful in your world. Your brain's just like it doesn't work. It's crazy. So at least you can write back and not say something way off, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever, and you you can just tell me to shut up anytime because Shelly does, but was there ever a time where you felt like super, super down, like you were going down that path too because of that? No? I wonder if it's something like in your brain that you don't even know is there,
Yeah.
you know?
I think there's so many aspects to suicide that people don't realize. They label it as one thing, and there's so many things. But I've never had that thought. Never thought, okay, I'm done. I'm out. This is too much. And my daughter and I check in on each other about that too. Just we talk a lot, obviously.
Sure, of
And,
course, I hope you do.
Yeah. If we're having a bad day or whatever, it tends to be, it can easily be a trigger when you see somebody being anxious or really, really down or really, really sad. That's part of the trauma. Instantly you go to the dark side of, oh my gosh, something's wrong. I got to stop this. You start getting that PTSD feeling, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I know you've been through the EMDR, and I'm starting to do that too, therapy,
That was gonna be the next
because
question,
it's
by the
just a
way.
trigger.
Yeah.
But you don't realize it until you start becoming aware that you have, I call it the other shoe dropping syndrome. For us, it's the other shoe's going to drop.
The amazing thing about EMDR is it opens up your subconscious, and I don't totally understand how it works either. I was actually seeing a therapist, and she's like, hey, try this EMDR therapy. I'm like, well, what is it? How does it work? She's like, I don't know, but it works.
Yeah, that's what I said to you. I don't know how it works.
Yeah,
I'm
but
just
it works.
trusting the process.
It works.
Yeah.
It does work. And we talked a little bit. We were messing around with the sound in here and stuff. And when we were talking, you don't even understand the process, right? But you have faith in it.
Right.
And that's key, because everybody's told me, anybody who's had EMDR, it works. We don't know why it works, but it works. And part of the process is I was told, and I didn't believe this. I put these headphones on. I got these vibrating things in my hand. I'm like, whatever. I'm like, you're gonna electrocute me, or like, what the hell's going on?
Right.
But you make small decisions in your life that change your life, and it helps you to see the world through a different pair of glasses. And it's really amazing that you can be so successful and so amazing as a grandmother and a career woman and all those things, and you're running it, a percentage of your potential. And EMDR helps you get back to that potential,
Right.
And start changing things in your life so you can be joyful again.
Right.
Because your subconscious has so much power over how you behave and how you act, and it's just
You
amazing.
have to believe that. I think that's the first step, is you have to believe that that is true, that you can change the pain into joy. And I think that's the hardest step for a lot of people to take.
And maybe you don't even change the pain into joy, but you change it into like an understanding or an acceptance.
Right.
And then you can remember them and honor them, and but that was their choice, and clearly, right?
Right.
And respect that choice and move forward, right? You can't live in the past. You can't.
Right.
You can never have a life if you do that. And it's with anything. And at the same time, somebody experienced what you experienced. You can't. There's no advice.
Right.
I mean, I can't imagine a therapist like, what the hell would you say?
Right.
And I'm smiling because I don't know what else to do besides cry. I can smile or cry.
Right.
So it's mind blowing what people go through and how they sustain that trauma, and then how they get to like an EMDR. So 4 years ago, I think, was your son, right? So between that horrible event and EMDR, like, how did you need to process so that you were ready for EMDR, or how did you do that?
Well, again, everybody deals with it their own way, right?
Yeah.
I got super busy. Well, that's not true. After my son died, my daughter at that point had just got engaged literally a month after my son died, and was living in Oklahoma. So I spent a lot of time with them in Oklahoma. I kind of shut down for about a year so that I could just kind of figure some stuff out and stay really super quiet. Some people need to talk it out a lot. I needed to go internal. So I spent a lot of time in quiet time, a lot of time in journaling, scripture, reading.
Do you think that
walking.
alone time is important? Like when we
For
say
me,
alone.
yes.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it is for me too.
And then all sorts of stuff happened. So my daughter got married. A year later, got pregnant.
He must be an amazing man.
He's,
He has to be just an amazing,
you
caring,
have no idea.
loving man. Yeah, I don't have
Yeah.
any idea.
He's
That
just
must be
like a
awesome.
rock.
That's so cool.
He's just even keel all the time. And been just so, because he came into this situation. Well, they were already dating seriously, obviously, when my son died, but he never met my husband. So for him to come into that, he just, yeah, he's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you did that kind of in hiding thing for a year, and then what happened? What got you out of that?
Somewhat in hiding. I was still working.
Right.
Because I had a lot of clients at that point.
You
And I was
let
coaching.
them down, right?
Right. No, I still worked through them, through working with them. I just stopped putting myself out there to bring more in for a while. So I managed what I had, but I wasn't out networking as much as I used to, and all of that. It just kind of all shut down. And still to this day, that overly extroverted part of me is not a part of my world anymore, really. I do a little bit of it, but I don't seek it out as much as I used to.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when I did my last session was right about like the 20th of August, right in there, I think. Anyway, that last session opened me up again. Like I was kind of like that too. I was almost like, I felt like I was on an island, and I was not scared. Like I'm always in a good mood. Carly always gives me crap. She's like, you're always in a good mood. She's like, it's exhausting, but generally I am, but I didn't have I would have been scared to do this. I don't think I would have done it. Even the first day I was sitting on the parking lot and I'm like, holy shit, I'm really going to do this. I'm all sweating. I went to the store and I got a Monster. I'm like, oh my God, what the heck, And I came back, I just sat down and just did it. Everybody here is great. Like the energy here is good, right? I mean, it's a great environment. But honestly, and I'm saying this to give you that hope and that promise that it does come back. Like who you really are comes back.
Right.
And I forgot, you know what I mean? I have this giant heart and this giant personality, and not in like an obnoxious way normally.
Yeah.
But it's like you just have that want and need to be back. It feels like my brain feels like it's 16 again.
Well, it's not that I want that back. It's just I guess what it is I have very strong boundaries now around where my energy goes.
Okay.
Very strong boundaries because energy is energy, right? So if I'm going to be with people, I want to be with people where the energy is really good.
Oh yeah.
And it's always up.
That's what changes. Yeah.
Yes.
That
so
changes too.
that's what I'm talking about around. I've just gotten very protective around my energy and my emotions and who I spend my time with.
And it's boundaries. It's setting boundaries. Shani and I talked about that today, and Shelly and I talk about that a lot too. But it's you. I won't say you attract what you are, but you essentially do.
Yeah.
And part of that is setting good, healthy boundaries of what you'll accept and what you won't accept. And one of the things that I found personally, and people that I've talked to, is that after a traumatic event, you almost have like a low self-esteem, like you're at a low, not low self-esteem, but low self-worth. You're like, what the like, why would this happen? And you're vulnerable. And that's when those people come in that can, mess with you and take advantage of you and those types of things.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that in our book.
Yeah, and sometimes it's purposeful and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you let them, you almost teach them to somewhat abuse you,
Right.
Emotionally, and it becomes a super toxic, super horrible deal, and that's a common thing. So thank God, you wrote that book because it, gives everybody that information. And I think, ULA, getting your life back whole again and things like that, everything that you're doing helps people to not be in a vulnerable spot. I was for a really long time. I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
That's really cool of you. And I really, really appreciate you doing that, because when we walked in this morning, everything's raw and everything's really like off the cuff. And I asked you while we were doing that ULA thing. So that's really amazing that you just said, yeah, I'll talk about it.
Yeah.
I even said, do you want to take some time? You're like, no, I'm ready to go.
Well, I've been talking about it publicly for a long time.
Yeah.
So, and usually, a lot of times my daughter and I are together. And it's interesting to have us talk together because we have similar perspectives and some different. So it's interesting for people to hear from me and also to hear from her. And in the book, we actually, each chapter, we talk on a topic, and I have a section and she has a section.
Right.
So it's Yeah, it's very cool. But no, I'm happy
It's
to talk
healing
about
too,
it.
a little bit, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
part of the process. It seems to,
Yeah.
yeah. When we first started, Shelley, you met Shelley, but Shelley and I, when we first started, it was almost like we were sort of unpacking and making sense of things. And now, you know, like this week, I'm like, all right, all that's done. Let's really get into the meat and potatoes and stuff, you know, and let folks like you share your story. And you know, it's not about, as you know, it's never about you, right?
Right.
It's
It's
pretty
not.
amazing how that works. Life
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you again.
Thank
Kerry.
you. I appreciate you having me on.
Of course. That was Carey Conley, discussion on suicide. Thank you for watching The Knot.